Hi everyone, this is Andrew Consoli, co-founder of BeatCamp. Welcome to BeatCamp Deconstruct, our new monthly video series where I will break down a track and share the process with you. So for this first month, I've chosen probably one of the biggest tracks of 2016, a collaboration between The Weeknd and Daft. I'm talking about Starboy. The track was released on the 22nd of September on XO Records, which is the Weeknd record label. And together between Spotify and YouTube has reached more than 700 million plays, which is a big number. So a little bit of facts about the track. So the track is A minor and has 93 BPM per minute. So I'm gonna share my screen now so that you can see what I'm doing here. A quick introduction to my remake. I'm using a software called Steinberg Cubase, which is actually this is actually an old version. But you shouldn't be put off by the fact that you use a different DAW software, because what's important is the process, not the tools that you use. The same applies for virtual instruments, the same applies for effects and everything else. So the most important thing is to learn the process, then you can do whatever you want with any kind of tools that you already have. Having said so, I'll give you a quick run through the track just to get the flavors of what I've done here, and then we go with the sounds. Okay, so that was a quick run through the track. Now we're gonna have a look at different sounds I've used to remake Starboy. The track has a typical sound signature from Daft Punk, which is very analog. So I've decided to use Polyplex, which is a synth by Native Instruments that runs inside Reactor. And the good thing of this synth is that it has a lot of very good analog sounding samples and allows you to do sound layering, which is really good. So this is the kick. There we got snare clap, a little bit of a ream, and a shaker. Let's have a look at the patterns here. So as you can see, there is nothing really complex. Let's go to the bass. So as you can see, I got two bass sounds here. One is the bass that originally I was using, and I just decided that it wasn't good enough, and I'll show you why. So this is the bass with the kick. This is just a Monarch, another very interesting analog sounding synth by Native Instruments. Why I didn't like it? Because the release and the sound was too pure. It wasn't really cutting for me. So I decided to use an 808. Here it is. What I've done to make it sound a little bit similar to the original is not sounding exactly like the original, but it's similar. So what I've done is using FabFilter Saturn and distorting a little bit of the mids of the bass with a couple of LFOs here. Why? Because the original sound, as you can hear now, so they sound really different, but I've tried to go as close as possible. The original sound has a lot of distortion that is modulating, and also has something weird that is very difficult to remake, which is a little bit of elements that are detuning inside the bass. So the bass is not exactly in tune. We go through the next sound, which is the piano. Here it is. So in this case I'm using piano called the Grandeur. Specific things about this sound is that I choose the lid of the piano being closed, and I've done a little bit of space. The whole feeling here is a very mellow, sad sounding piano, so I decided to not have that kind of powerful, bright piano sound. Nothing crazy about the processing, as you can see. We got just like an EQ here, obviously removing the low end of the sound. Then we have a little bit of reverb here, one of my favorite, Valhalla vintage verb. And then there you go, this is something interesting. So I'm using this free Rough Rider stereo compressor by Audio Damage. This is really cool for compression. In this case it's doing a little bit of a New York compression. It's nothing crazy. Let's go to the next sound. So I'm going very fast because I want to show you everything I've done here. Buds. I'm basically taking the same chords of the track and elaborating a little bit on top. In this section the chord is staying still, but then we'll see that there will be some movement where we talk about the arrangement. Nothing crazy here. We can see there's just like a little bit of EQ, actually a lot of EQ here, because there were a lot of frequencies that I didn't like. I can show you actually. Depending on the speakers or headphones you're using to listen to this, you will have a different sensation. But in my studio those frequencies were sounding a little bit harsh, and in the original track they're not there, so you know that's what was happening. Nothing crazy here. This is a compressor. This is what Cubase use for the sidechain, so I'm sidechaining this to the kick, so nothing crazy here. Let's go to the next sound. The next sound is something that I'm not really super happy about, but I came pretty close. Is this one. So it's a kind of a fluty synth, and this is the original sound. Obviously it sounds completely different because you got a vocal which is mixed absolutely in front of everything else, and in the background you have this little sound. Here there's no vocal, so you feel that this sound is really big. Let's close with two effect sounds, and then we're done with the sounds. So we have a noise in the opening which is nothing different than just a normal sound, which was a little bit different. I used the chopper, which is a kind of a the chopper is a chopper basically is a kind of a removing is a kind of an automation of the volume. So I'll show you how it sounds without. Nothing crazy. Obviously a little bit of EQ because I don't like when there is a low end in sounds that we don't need low end. And then we go with something actually pretty funny, which is this one. So this sound, this effect sound, is one of the most used throughout the whole track. I wanted to have fun because I like sound design, so I basically took my microphone and sang it. Here it is. So this is me actually singing. Don't have a laugh at it, but it's I've sung that. Then it's time stretched, and then obviously there's a lot of, as you can see here, a little bit of sound processing. So we got obviously very aggressive EQ. Little Alter Boy, this is an amazing plugin for pitching all those cool vocals that now we hear in every kind of trap or deep house track lately. Then we have a little bit of reverb, one of my other favorite reverb, Valhalla Room, really good. And then DJM filter, which is actually an emulation of DJM Pioneer mixers. And then a little bit of Autopan, which is automated. Nothing crazy. Okay, I will move to the musical side of it, and then we go to the arrangement. The musical side of it, there's nothing crazy happening. So we are in A minor, that's the key of the track. Hope not to be mistaken. But yeah, I'll show you what I've done here. So what is happening here is that we got 3 chords. There are 4 chords here, but the original, I mean, the chords are originally 3, just voiced in a different way. Very easy triads. So if we look at the chords that we're playing here, we have obviously A, there you go, then we have G, yeah, then we have F, And then we have again G. That's what I was saying. So we got only 3 chords, but they are voiced in a different way, so they sound completely different. As you can see, the chords the Weeknd is using here are not voiced like the usual triad. So the A is not voiced like this. It's voiced in a slightly different way that makes the chord sounding a little bit more mellow, a little bit more sad, if we can say so. And this is how it's voiced. So you see the difference between the triad, which is a normal minor triad in this case, and this voicing, which make it sound a little bit more sad. Then we go down with the next chord, which is G, voiced again in a different way. And then we go to the F, which is actually voiced like a normal triad. And then we go back to G. But G in this case, rather than having the voicing, the normal voicing, as this.
I'm trying to put you in the worst mood. P1 cleaner than your church shoes. Really point to just to hurt you. All red lamb just to tease you.
Pads. Pads are really easy. So we're basically building on this A minor, very easy to do triad, and we're adding some notes. That's the whole thing we're doing. So we're doing this, then we have another note, so nothing crazy. Is really static in terms of you know, musical elements. What it changes is when we go to the actual chorus 2 section, and here we're gonna have basically this. Again, this is exactly the same chord we were talking about. These are voiced in a slightly different way, but is exactly the same principle. You take a chord which is very basic, very easy, and you voice it in a different way. You can try actually different notes that are within that kind of key and see what kind of feel you have. In this case, the feel is very mellow, very dark, so it works very well. There's no much in terms of musical elements here. I mean, the bass is exactly the same here, except when it comes to the chorus 2 full. You see it's changing. What is changing in the bass, I can show you, is the root note. It's basically following the root note of the A, G, F, G again. So it's very basic. What else in terms of musical elements? We don't have much. One thing that actually I wanted to point here is that this is something that, you know, is not very used, and it's called glissando. The glissando comes from a kind of a guitar world. And rather than actually playing your chords like something a little bit more with expression, is this. You can see it from here. The beginning of the notes aren't exactly on the same part, and this is not even very quantized, just because I wanted to give that kind of organic playing live feel. So the arrangement is very smart, and little things like dropping the kick and basically cutting every instrument for then, you know, for half a bar, and other little things like, you know, changing, for example, automations are very important. If I show you the snare, so if we focus on the snare here in the verse, and then we go to the chorus, it's completely different. So this is something that makes the arrangement a little bit more fresher. What I've done in this case is just, as you would see in here, these are the automations for the snare clap. There you go. This is nothing different than opening up the reverb, and inside the actual polyplex I've just like added another layer of sound. So these little things makes the track really interesting and not boring, because at the end of the day it's always the same groove, as you can see, the red and the blue here, repeating throughout the whole track. And the most important thing of the whole track, one of the highlights obviously, is the vocal production. The vocal production makes this track shine, and this is a very important thing to say. The last section before we close this first BeatCamp Deconstruct is the mixing. So I haven't spent much time on mixing, but as you can see, I have a master bus here. This is something I do usually. So I have something that kind of is kind of doing the mastering straight away, so that I can feel how the track sounds. And the most important thing in this track is probably the low end. So the low end I already showed you is the 808. There you go. So one of my tricks for the kick that I show you now is this one. It's obviously a little bit of distortion here. We have distortion just on the top frequencies of the kick. The low is absolutely untouched because I don't want to mess with it. So without, it would be like very dull. Now if you listen on his own, obviously this sound isn't changing that much, isn't like very appealing, but when you listen in a mix, this little top distortion makes it really cut through. What else am I doing to the kick is very interesting, is actually this EQ called Music EQ. This is a really good EQ because it gives a lot of bottom hand to the kick without destroying it. So I will actually show you. It's a very subtle difference, but it's there. I can feel it in my studio. As you can see, it's mostly on 110 Hz, so I'm giving a pretty big boost, which 3 dB is a lot of boost. And it gives that kind of humph that actually carries the track. Other interesting thing I'm doing, obviously in the rim, I'm using a SPL all the drums, as usual, are going to a drum bus. That is exact. I'm not doing much here, but I'm using one of the best compressor plugins I ever found. It's called Klanghelm, and this is an emulation of, this is a Mark II emulation of a kind of a very aggressive compressor. So yeah, other than that, there's nothing crazy I'm doing in mixing. It's just like trying to carve the sounds and get as close as possible to what the Weeknd has done. And that, I think, concludes our first track deconstruct. This was Andrew Consoli. I hope you guys enjoyed. Any questions, any suggestion for the next track, just post on YouTube or Facebook if you're watching this on Facebook, and give us a shout out, hello@thisisbeatcamp.com. So anything you have, send us an email, comment, share if you like it, and I'll see you the next time. Ciao!